Hi, I'm Jamie. This is Dead Dodge Garage, and this is a 1973 Dodge D200 tin grille crew cab, which is about to get a serious upgrade. A year or two ago now, Tom Hergert with Rocket Restorations decided he needed to own a Cummins-powered Dodge crew cab. To that end, he started collecting the trucks, and before all was said and done, he had 3 of them. This one turns out to be the best of the bunch. This is a 3/4 ton crew cab with a service box, and if you couldn't tell by the little shreds of Forest Service green everywhere, it used to be a Forest Service truck. I don't know why the Forest Service loved two-wheel drive trucks so much, but they did. As I'm sure you'll figure out, this thing is not exactly a mint one owner. Thank you. Tom bought this truck out of Montana. The nice thing about it is not a total rusty pile. It actually has most of a roof, drip rails, and all sorts of good things. The not so nice thing about it is it reeks in here. It's kind of damp, everything's moldy and disgusting, and for some unknown reason, it is completely full of garbage. That needs some lubrication. Why Tom didn't at least give this thing a quick cursory clean out before delivering it to me, I will never understand. An empty box for a tow strap is always a good sign. Same with things like spare starters and carburetors sitting around. Like all early to mid-70s Dodge trucks, it does have the cab fuel tank. We will not be utilizing that for our purposes. Is the little shorty service bed cool, or does it need to go? We haven't decided yet. This truck used to have an onboard air system, and though this tank is horribly rusty and probably not worth using, it might find its way to the Ram truck anyway. Oh, I closed the door. Dang it. There we go. One of the best things about this thing is the factory 3-pedal setup. It's got a shifter there for an MP435 4-speed, and that's pretty cool. I actually used this truck in a previous video. It was the Saratoga revival where I tried to unaccordion the front driver frame rail. I hooked that thing to, I think, the brown crew cab that Mitchell ended up buying and I did a video on later, and then used this with a chain at the front to try and yank it that way. Surprise, surprise, it didn't really work. In the doing, we learned that this later 360 under the hood does run, but makes horrible noises when it gets warm and the oil light starts flickering at idle. So this is a core engine and it needs to go. This is a 1992 Dodge D250 single cab truck. 93, doesn't matter. The D, of course, means two-wheel drive, same as our crew cab. And under the hood of this one, we've got the greatest engine ever fitted to a Dodge truck. The Cummins 5.9 liter inline 6-cylinder turbo diesel. Now, it seems highly unlikely that anyone watching my videos would be unfamiliar with these engines, but if you don't know, this is a fantastic inline 6 turbo diesel engine. They found their way into the Dodge trucks in 1989 and pretty much revitalized the line. From that point, Dodge trucks became well known as being reliable, great for hauling, and relatively economical. 500,000 miles is nothing for a Cummins. These things go forever and ever and ever. At least if you run them at the stock power level. If you turn the wick up and try and make 500 horsepower, which many people do love to do, you're probably not going to get that kind of longevity out of them. But it is a really great platform for making power too. Common changes for horsepower include bigger injectors, modified fuel pumps for more delivery, twin turbo kits, or at least an improved single turbo, and all sorts of other things. Because the Cummins arrived in 1989, it was bolted into essentially the same truck Dodge had been building since 1972. If you have an interest in engine swapping an older Dodge with a Cummins, that is great news because all of the parts to do that existed from the factory. There are actually a couple ways you can make an old school looking tin grille have Cummins power under the hood. I showed one of them in a video about 6 months ago when I bolted all of the older style tin grille stuff onto my 1992 Dodge Ram truck. What we're going to do here is a very similar process, but not quite. We're going to take all of the parts off of this truck and put them into this truck instead. We're going to join the front ends in exactly the same way, but obviously there's going to be a whole lot more involved here. I found this 92 donor truck for Tom on Facebook. The price was right, so he rushed right out to pick it up. It even has a title, but it has various bits of crash damage and some rust. Also, the transmission in this one is kind of exploded. I don't know how it is every single one of these early Cummins trucks ends up with a smashed bumper, but they do. We're going to be completely gutting this truck to get all of the Cummins swap parts for the 73. And there's an extra little added bonus for me in that, because this is essentially the same truck as my 92 Ram truck. And it's got all kinds of goodies like a factory tack, a super nice gauge cluster, and a factory tilt column with cruise control buttons that I could really use. Also a visor. Pretty excited about that. If I still had the 92 front end, this would have made a great donor for a grille, a door or two, a fender, and a hood, but we're way past that. I'll tell you right now, it is absolutely possible to do a Cummins swap without a complete donor truck like this. It's been done countless times in the past, but this is really the way to go. Again, if you're swapping into a tin grill Dodge, this donor truck is going to have everything: engine mounts, intercooler, piping, wiring, accessories, every little bracket, every doodad, everything you could need. The radiator support is a big one because this is intercooled Cummins specific. We will be modifying it to accept the headlight buckets of the 73, just like we did on the Ram truck for the 78 grill. We'll also be using the inner fenders out of that truck because they include provisions to mount the air box and the grid heater relays. Now, to change the radiator support, we do need to take the fenders off of the truck that's being swapped. And that's fine because removing all of that stuff will make tons and tons of room to get things settled. As you can see, Allan is wasting no time digging into the parts truck. The basic plan for this is gut it like a fish and leave nothing on the table. We're planning to use the rear axle out of the Cummins truck. We're going to use the heavy-duty springs out of this truck. We may use the brakes out of this truck. We're going to need a lot. We don't have to remove every single component. Again, this thing does have a title and we could take it straight to a junkyard, but because we need the springs and the axle, we're basically stripping it down to a bare frame anyway, so we might as well just keep going. We're going to be left with a somewhat ruined bed, a rusty cab, and a frame when all is said and done. Now, we have kind of already started on the 73 as well. This thing did have this crazy home-built push bumper thing, which was terrible, ugly, and right in the way. It had a winch on it that had no cable and hadn't functioned in 30 years, so we elected to throw that in the scrap pile. Strangely, I actually have a front bumper that kind of sort of matches the patina of the truck. It is off of a swept line, but I'm not going to let that stop me. We'll have to modify some brackets, but I think we'll be able to get this on here later. In a minute here, we will get this truck pulled forward like 10 feet. That'll make getting at things like the bed, the drive shaft, the fuel tank, and all of that much easier. I'm going to start pulling doors. We're going to get the hood and the fenders off ASAP. We're going to make this truck a pile of parts as quick as we can. Again, we'll be saving every usable piece off this truck, like the tailgate. Despite what the bed looks like, this is actually in pretty good shape. Obviously, we're going to save that. Again, the somewhat unfortunate thing about this truck is it's kind of a total rusty pile. Most of the hardware so far is coming apart fine, but we're definitely going to have problems in places. Like here, for example. That one's never coming out in a million years. I absolutely despise these modern style headlights in old trucks like this. Please don't do that. Does your first gen need a hood? We've got one. It's got some sweet patina, by which I mean it looks like it's been on fire. So much easier to work on things with the hood removed. We've got the factory air box coming out now. Here's the actual box. Here's the filter that was in it. We do have a new one. There's the pipe. This original turbo seems to be, I don't know, fine. We're going to use it. At least for now, we're not planning any horsepower mods for this engine. We're just going to clean it up, service it a little bit, replace the head gasket, adjust the valves, get fresh fluids in it. I might spritz some fresh black paint on there, I guess. But stock is going to be just fine for what we're doing. Or at least as stock as it is currently, because the pump on this one's already been messed with. This truck does actually run, which we'll demonstrate in a minute here, but it has a really neat issue. It will not shut off with the key. We thought this was a bad shutoff solenoid, so I got a new shutoff solenoid. It still doesn't work. This is actually a somewhat common side effect of messing with the pump, attempting to make extra horsepower and billow clouds of black smoke out the back of the truck. Essentially, there's too much fuel pressure and it just bypasses the shutoff solenoid's plunger pluggy thingy. We're going to have to address this at some point. Currently, you have to get out here and mess with the linkage. I think this guy shuts it off the hard way. We could simply install a pull cable there and call it a day, but it sure would be nice if the key would turn the dang thing off. Tom has dreams of saving all of the air conditioning stuff from this truck and using it on the 73. I don't think that's a good idea. Not great. I'm confident I said this truck is a 92. It's actually a 93, but it makes no difference. Essentially, I think 90, they got that newer grille. 91-ish, they all have intercoolers. I'm a little hazy on those details, but anyway, it's the late intercooled one. We kind of need this hood release cable. Unfortunately, it's been rubbing on the corner of the radiator for like 35 years. and it's not looking too hot. When we lose the original radiator support, we'll lose the original hood latch and mounting location. That vertical support piece has to go too. We'll use the one out of the later truck, which just bolts on here, but it does have to be moved slightly. And I learned on the ramp truck conversion, we had to bend the hood slightly to allow it to fit up into here. Fender well, out. Nothing to it. I think that's fine. It's always amazed me how much of a Cummins truck you don't need. Doesn't roll very good. Is totally off, but obviously it continues to run and sound awesome and billow fuel smoke. Anyway, here's the shutdown procedure. Nice. With the truck pulled forward, we have better access all the way around to remove things. Again, we've got to pull the bed off, we're going to pull the doors off, and now we can start removing mission critical pieces like the radiator. Well, draining the radiator is going to get complicated. There's just no way any of this stuff is going to be salvageable. It's all rusting to bits. The parts of this truck that actually are very nice are kind of surprising, like the dash and these door panels. If I still had late style doors, I'd be installing these right now. But I don't. I'm going to stick with the old school black ones. Also, I don't have power windows. Taillights aren't quite as nice as I thought they were. Shocking, I know. You know, someone in the Midwest would probably be pretty excited to own this bed for their Dodge truck. Thing is, this whole passenger side is made out of Bondo. It's actually really super bad. You can tell in here where the sidewall is separated from the floor because it was so smashed. And it doesn't sit on the truck right, either because the bed is twisted, the frame is twisted, or maybe both. Yes, it has a flat tire. That's part of why it looks so funny, but that's definitely not all of it. Oh, this thing had twin exhaust stacks through the bed. Tom doesn't want to do that on his crew cab for some reason. Getting everything unhooked from the engine so it's ready to pull. I've got the heater hoses loose. I'll get all of the electrical flopped off that way. We're going to take it out complete. Turbo's going to stay. I've got to get the downpipe off. Obviously, the charge pipes are going to come off. I did pull the engine cover, so it'll be safe. We're planning to pull this out with the tractor. I'll tell you right now, I've lifted just a Cummins engine with the tractor, and that was heavy. The added weight of the Getrag 5-speed hanging off the back, it's going to be a lot. I told Tom to order a new radiator. I don't think he's done that yet, so let this serve as a reminder. This thing is super corroded in places and full of sludge. All the small connectors on the engine can stay in place. They're on this sub harness, which just gets disconnected from the truck here and here. There's another connector over here as well. The grid heater cables do have to be disconnected. They're solid all the way from the relays over there. We've now got the whole truck harness, the grid heater relays, which we will be reusing, the starter, AC, and horn relays, all the lighting stuff. Everything is loose and ready to come off, just as soon as we get this wiper motor unhooked. Pulled the condenser off of the front. It actually mounts to the intercooler on 4 pedestals, and only 2 of the fasteners broke. The intercooler mounts on 2 rubber pads here and then a bolt on each side toward the top, keep it from moving up out of those. Obviously the piping needs to be off of the intercooler to pull it. I've got this one loose. What's kind of funny is I got this boot spinning and it took a bunch of the paint off of the intercooler with it. This thing is pretty nasty and corroded. It's going to need a cleaning and probably a paint job. Perforated intercooler boots are a pretty common issue. You can start losing boost through little holes you won't ever see. You can do a bubble test to confirm this, but you do have to pressurize the intake, and that can be a bit challenging. We're just going to take the extra step of replacing these while everything is apart. That way, we won't have to worry about it. Intercooler's out, and I immediately taped up the pipe connections. We certainly don't want any critters taking up residence in there. Radiator's still dribbling, but it should be done pretty soon, and we can pull that out. Drop the driver's side inner fender and pull the fender off, and then the radiator support is free. It's amazing how fast stuff comes apart when you don't have to worry about putting it back together. Visor removed. Still working on those vintage running lights though. Not today, but someday soon. Although we will have to trim it around 2 of my cab lights, which is inconvenient. Radiator's finally done piddling. I even got the lower hose off this side and almost no more came out. So that's good. Pretty much ready to lift this out now. It sits in rubber feeties just like the intercooler, and the shroud is simply clipped on. It's got one clip on each side at the top. At the bottom, it just slides into some little tabs. Or it was, you know, till they rusted off. I know I mentioned the corrosion, but you can see that here. This is an original copper brass radiator, and normally I would not be excited about replacing it. Look, a little beetle. But this one's pretty gross, and I really think we need to get the new aluminum type. They're not even all that expensive. I could help. I'm not going to, but I could. As I think I mentioned, we're planning to use the Cummins inner fenders. The driver's side one isn't as important. It does have the mounts for the grid heater relays, but we could always do that a different way. This one has seen some stuff. Apparently, this whole corner of the truck was wiped out at some point. We are going to have to cut this one bolt holding the driver's side inner fender in place because the little speed nut thingy broke. This radiator support is one of the most important pieces we need off of this truck. It's pretty common to see them rusty. Somehow this one is not too bad. I thought I saw some rust over here, but it's actually just the radiator mount. All that secures the rad support to the frame here, a pair of long bolts with a rubber oval-shaped locking thingy on the head, a rubber bushing here, and then a nut from below. They seem to be coming right out on this truck. It's very common to see these middle bushings completely destroyed, as these kind of seem to be. I ended up kind of making replacements for these on the 92 ramp truck. Nothing to it. Sure makes pulling the shroud easy. Got the fuel lines to the frame off. There are two of them. This is into the mechanical lift pump, and this is the return to the tank. It comes off back here. This one I just got by hand, no problem. That one was a little harder, but a pair of pliers got it. Didn't even ruin the clips. Alan's working on getting the booster master assembly off and saying bad words. We're definitely going to want this for our Cummins swap. We'll save the prop valve as well. Not so sure about the lines or this splitter, but we'll figure that out later. In case you were wondering, this is what's really wrong with this cab. It's not great. It could be fixed, but why? Allan got the column down. Rather annoyingly, this doesn't have disconnects down there like they did forever and ever and ever. It has them up here at all of the switches, just like a second gen. So we had to take all of the plastics off of the column. Anyway, with the column down out of the way, pulling the cluster surround bezel sure is a lot easier. Making that even easier, the fact that someone left out like half of the screws 20 years ago. Nice. Oh yeah, plug for the goofy Cummins lights. None of which work on my truck anyway. I'm kind of planning to delete that. Chrysler was using this same style of plug for their gauge clusters way back in the mid-60s. Steering column is out. Note how long that thing is. I was only able to swing it out of there because of that rag joint. I had to bend this shaft to get it through the door. Somebody allegedly knocked the steering junction box universal thingy apart. That's okay. Looks like it needed an overhaul anyway. Windshield's already smashed, so it really doesn't matter what happens to it, but I didn't necessarily want to cover myself in glass. Well, that's pretty. Hopefully this power steering pump's worth using. I am going to save the windshield gasket and locking strip. It's not very dry rotted, it's in fair shape. There are allegedly chunks of rusted cab stuck in it, but we're not going to worry about that right now. I really need door gaskets for the ramp truck, and the ones in this were almost better. Almost. Yeah, you know I'm taking those chrome visors for the door windows. Come on. Interior disassembly is coming right along. I got the e-brake pedal down. I'm getting the dash free now so we can swing that whole thing out of the way. I will get the shifter handle out first. The seat needs to go. I was thinking this carpet's nicer than what I got in the Ram truck, but then I sat right here for like 4 minutes getting this brake situation sorted, and my entire butt is wet now, and maybe sticky? So maybe not. Getting the custom bench shifter pulled. I've got the boot off. This was 4 8mm bolts. Now we've got 2 bolts right here, very much like a Hurst shifter. And I think these are 10s, although that looks smaller. Apparently someone was considering putting brakes on this thing like 6 months ago. Didn't happen though. Something else I really need for my Ram truck is a temp control cable. I still need one because this one's broken in exactly the same way. Allan has loosened the bed mounts and dropped the filler neck out of the way. We are probably going to have to adapt that to this service body. Yeah, I think we get to just slide this thing off now. Yeah, this looks fun.
Watch your fingers.
I think there's broken glass in my sock.
Up first.
Can that sit on the bumper?
Yep.
All right, let's grab the front.
Let's see if the filler neck's holding us.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. No, that's worse. Oh, I got it. Ready to party? Nice. Slide on the bumper. Watch your fingies. Is the trim cutting you? It's cutting me. Hey, okay. That was almost a predicament.
Yeah?
Yeah, this horrible plastic trim, so bad. I sliced my hand on this on the Ram truck and then I immediately razor bladed all of it off. Not worth.
Do you want to grab a wheel well and go backwards, or do you want to flip it?
Can we lift it? Like fully lift it? Oh yeah, that's fine. Okay. Up. Nope, my way. It's hooked on something. Stop! Just crooked there. There. There we go. Good enough. Woo. I do like this better. And it is nice that they cleaned and painted the frame. Now we're going to carefully remove this sliding back window. Okay. Ooh. That can actually be semi-well attached. Oh, that might have done something, but maybe not. Oh, there you go. Nice, just worked out my way. Okay. There you go. Nothing to it. Dash is just about ready to go. It's the row of 8mm screws across the top, 1/2 inch or 13 mil bolt on each side that it kind of sort of pivots on. These studs for the column do go through it, which can complicate matters. And for some reason, there are a couple small bolts over here on some extra support bracket that were holding us up. All kinds of various crap to disconnect here. We're trying to get the harness to come off with the dash. This goes out to lighting, brake warning switch, that sort of thing. This is the main firewall connector that has the power feeds, the engine connections, and all that kind of stuff. This goes to some of the door stuff. This is the brake light switch, clutch warning switch, speakers in the cab light, that sort of thing. Vacuum for the heater controls here, and a heat control cable, which again is broken. This is kind of ridiculous. This is the wiring harness for the driver's door. The passenger door has a disconnect right inside the truck, so you can unhook it. The driver's door is attached to all of this.
Yeah, it's going to be the whole door.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next. You sure we had to do all this just to pull the brake booster? There's the clutch master cylinder out of the firewall. There's the push rod. There's the neutral safety switch, or clutch safety switch, or whatever you want to call it. These actually twist into the firewall with a quarter turn. And once they're twisted in place, the only thing that holds them there is a plastic push clip that comes in from the inside. It's just supposed to block the one flat so it can't move. With that removed, there is nothing left attaching this engine to this cab, which we could now take off the frame. You know, if we wanted to. Alan?
Yes, sir.
We're getting too good at this. Insulating blanket for the heater box here. I decided to pull it after initially figuring I would just throw it in the garbage. I'm going to try and put it on the other truck to protect the heater box. It looks like it'll probably fit. The fan design is a little bit different, and the heater connections have moved on these later boxes, but the design is very similar. I just wasted like 15 minutes removing 2 bolts on this. That was really dumb. Pedals. Of course, we're doing this swap into an original manual transmission truck, so it has pedals, but that thing has a Z-bar type clutch linkage that was typical in the 70s and into the 80s. This thing has a hydraulic clutch, and so the pedal is ever so slightly different. We will be swapping these into the truck. Interestingly, this truck has an extra soundproofing, mine doesn't. Yeah, I'm saving all of that. You know what? Take a break. You've earned it.
I did?
Yeah.
Nice.
Looks pretty comfy. That, I believe, is a totally stripped Dodge cab, which means it should be much easier to do this. Woo! Ugh, gross. There appears to have been a leak. All right, ignoring the roof, this is actually a pretty nice cab. I almost feel bad now. Almost. Yeah, I reckon that's going to make the rest of this job a little easier. And that, I suppose, is how you do that. Now we've got a bare chassis that we can harvest the rest of the important parts off of. The body is completely out of the way, and we'll try and sell that. Or squish it, send it to Korea so it can be turned into Kias or whatever. Now I'll tell you, if this was a club cab long bed frame, we would be putting the crew cab on it and figuring out either fitting that bed or getting something totally separate. That would be way easier than swapping everything over to that frame. But because we have such a length difference, there's just no way that's going to happen. I am not the split, extend, and fish plate the frame back together guy either. And as I think I mentioned, this one might be slightly twisted. So instead, we'll harvest this one for all the good stuff, and then we'll do almost exactly the same job on the 73. Except we won't be rolling the cab on the ground. I think that's probably enough destruction and mayhem for one day, though. There's kind of just stuff everywhere. There are keep parts over here for the crew cab. There's sell parts. There's stuff I'm going to use. And then just garbage. That, like many other things, is a tomorrow Jamie and Allan problem. So for now, I put a little blankie on its head. It's days later, and nothing else has happened. But I thought I'd take this opportunity to take a closer look at this frame, all of the parts on it, and point out everything we're going to use. As I've already discussed, the underpinnings of these 70s trucks are very, very similar to these late 80s, early 90s Cummins trucks. These are both 3/4 ton pickups. They have similarly strengthened frames. They use similar axles, similar brakes, etc. If the wheelbase was compatible between this frame and that frame, you can bet your butt I would have lifted the crew cab and the clip and put them right on here. Unfortunately, because this is a crew and this is a single cab, the back of the cab would be like there. It just wouldn't work. Cat. Screw off. Now, starting with second-gen trucks, the frames are actually constructed in a different manner, and it's possible to separate out the ends and swap over the center section to get the frame length and the body mounts that you need for your application. That's cool, but first-gens don't have that feature. That was my third-gen frame. I don't have a second-gen handy, but similar idea. Yes, a talented fabricator could just extend this frame to match, but I'm not that guy. So instead, we're going to transfer over all of the heavy-duty running gear and the Cummins itself to our 73 truck. As mentioned, we'll also be using the radiator support and the inner fenders from the 93 truck and modifying it to mount our 73 headlights. Now again, I've already shown this process on the ramp truck, but I will show it on this when we get to that point. I'm sure this is obvious, but there are other ways to do this. You could cut these pieces off of the factory rad support, fabricate your own intercooler mounting, cut big holes for the piping to go through, and then come up with bracketry to get the radiator where it needs to be. You could use an aftermarket type radiator. There are all kinds of options, but we have factory pieces, and that's what we're going to work with. Here's a close look at the 12-valve Cummins 6BT engine with all of the Dodge garbage removed from around it. You can see this has the rotary-style VE injection pump there. There's a vacuum pump and then a power steering pump mounted off the back of it. The mechanical lift pump is back here. This is your hand priming lever. I have had my times with those. This is the big, gigantic Nippon Denso starter. It's held on with 3 12-point bolts to that block adapter. There's a crankcase breather. That's typical of the early type engine. Note these have 6 individual valve covers, which is pretty cool. I've been asked many times about the numbers seen on stickers attached to valve covers on Chrysler engines. Here's the one on the 12-valve Cummins. That is Chrysler's number for the engine assembly. Here's a look at the front accessories on the engine, all of which we will be retaining. Even if we don't end up using the AC compressor for now, we're going to keep it on this engine so it's there for future possibilities. You can see the belt tensioner here. Those are always bad, like always. If your Cummins has an obnoxious squeaky belt, replace that. Here's a Nippon Denso high output alternator. I think it's something like 105 amps. That'll do everything we could ever need in this truck. Here's the big clutch style cooling fan. It's actually mounted to a bracket and pulley right here. The water pump is here. This might be one of the easiest water pumps in the universe to change, although one bolt is slightly shrouded by the fan. The balancer on the Cummins is held on with 4 bolts instead of one big one. Note, this one does have a crank sensor. That is for the factory computer and the tachometer. This engine has the standard oil fill. For some reason, the one in the ramp truck has a cap here, and then it has this cap in the front valve cover. I mentioned the crankcase breather, but I want to circle back around to that. You'll notice this one doesn't have a hose at all, which is interesting. There's a good bit of oily residue here. Also all over the starter, not ideal. We should probably get a hose on here. If your hose ever becomes kinked or blocked off, you're going to start blowing seals out everywhere, which is not good. I've actually seen a timing cover gasket completely blown out and puking oil everywhere because the hose on a 24 valve coming off the timing cover up here was accidentally kinked, allegedly, while other repairs were being made to the truck. Instead of replacing the timing cover gasket, we just unkinked the hose and it was fixed. The fuel filter on these engines is mounted to a filter head below the intake section of the head. There's a water separator valve on the bottom, which should only drain water when you open it. I know I pointed out the fuel lines, the feed, and the return from back here. This comes from the injectors. On a 24 valve, the return is actually cast into the head, and there's an extra banjo bolt on the very back here against the cab. Don't forget that when you're pulling the head. That's experience speaking. Those lines come back here to the sending unit in the tank. Despite it being gigantic and having 4 wires going into it, this is not a pump. This just has like a pancake filter thing at the bottom and the sending unit for the gauge. We are planning to reuse this tank and those lines for the crew cab. Hopefully it fits under the cab. We may have to modify cross members or even reuse these cross members by cutting off the rivets and transferring them to the other frame. The injectors are here on the passenger side of the head. Obviously there are 6 of them, because it's a 6-cylinder, and then you can see the rail of return lines running between all of the injectors. Here's what the other end of the lines on the injection pump look like. These are very obnoxious to get to in the truck. Also, small note, you can tweak the timing of the injection pump on these engines pretty easily. You have to loosen all of the nuts that secure the pump to the timing cover and this extra support bolt back here. Advancing the timing is a good way to find a few extra horsepowers, but do so at your own peril. The data tag for the Cummins is right here on the driver's side of the timing cover back plate thing, gear housing, whatever the heck it's called. All of the pertinent information for your engine is found on here. Model year, emissions stuff, and the horsepower rating, which on this one is 160. The firing order, just like almost every other inline 6 in the universe, is 153624. Oh, in case you were wondering, we will be changing that fuel filter. This is the underwhelming factory turbo. This is a Holset H1C. Look how tiny it is compared to the size of this engine. It's kind of incredible, actually. These have no wastegate whatsoever. The stock turbo on the 2nd gen, the HX or HY35, is also not particularly impressive, but it's a much better unit than this and makes a decent upgrade for the 12 valve. There are also all kinds of aftermarket turbos you can get that will do very impressive things. And of course, the aforementioned twin turbo. Well, that's a fun solution. Even with this little guy though, you've got a whole lot more power potential than the factory rating of 160. Of course, the other thing to keep in mind here is, although the factory horsepower rating was only 160, the torque rating was like 460 pound-feet. These are the factory heater pipes. We will be retaining these. I don't think these hoses line up properly to the earlier heater box. Maybe the connections are further over here. We'll come up with something for that. We did save the AC and heater box out of the 93, and I'm pretty sure we could adapt it to the 73, but the amount of work seems ridiculous. The stock turbo is mounted to a stock exhaust manifold. You can upgrade these. We're not going to. Because this is the 1st gen part, the turbo is mounted right in the center. On a 2nd gen, it's moved, I don't remember which direction, but it's not centered. If you've never messed with these engines, you might not have a sense of how gigantic they are. I'd like to set the 360 on the ground next to this thing so we can get a bit of a comparison. Moving rearward from the engine, we find a block adapter. Note, there is no bell housing shape built into the Cummins engine. You have to have an adapter like this to join it to a transmission. Now, in agricultural, industrial, marine applications, you'll generally see an adapter on here that has a round SAE type bell pattern. But this one, for Chrysler, uses a pattern very much like an earlier torque flight type transmission. Yeah, it may be like that, but it's certainly bigger. Incidentally, this pattern was also used on the back of the V10 engine, or at least one very similar to this. And behind that adapter, we've got the only manual transmission that was used in the 1st gen trucks, the 5-speed Getrag 360. You can tell it's a Getrag 360 by the way it says Getrag 360. These transmissions are well known to be ridiculously heavy and not necessarily the strongest. And as I mentioned before, this one is blown up. It makes horrible noises, and it looks like all of the gear oil has been coming out of it for quite some time. This is an NV4500. This was the manual transmission used in second-gen Cummins trucks, at least up until 2001 when the 6-speed NV5600 was introduced as an option. These are widely regarded as being slightly better than the Getrag, but they do have problems of their own. Namely, they have a fun issue where the nut holding the overdrive gear, fifth, onto the back of the guts of the transmission here in the tail housing, backs itself off, and then the various metal bits play ping pong inside of the transmission, and you lose fifth gear, which is inconvenient. One might imagine that the manual transmission woes of the Cummins-powered Rams were finally solved with the introduction of the 6-speed NV5600 in 2001. But they weren't. Those had a super tiny weak input shaft that was prone to breakage under heavy power. The input shaft problem was solved in 2003, and then the 5600 was finally kinda good. And then it left in 06 or 07, and a Mercedes G56 replaced the NV. And those are supposed to be pretty great. The Getrag 5-speed is not necessarily the best, but it's what we're going with in this application. We're not going to use the blown up one. We're going to use this good spare unit. It kind of leaks too, and I'm sure it's got a gazillion miles on it, but it was supposed to be good. I might do Tom a favor, remove the top plate and inspect it, or I might just throw it in there. For my Ram truck project, I considered countless manual transmission options. I was even thinking about big truck transmissions. Ultimately, I found the right deal on an NV4500 and decided that would be the way to go. Yes, these have that fifth gear nut issue, but with that solved, they're supposed to be pretty good. Though this comes from a second gen and not a first gen truck, it's a very easy swap, and that will be the subject of an upcoming video. Unfortunately, I gotta build Tom's truck first. A couple more notes on this before I move on. I mentioned that block adapter. That one is specific to this Getrag. I don't think it even works for the automatic that was used in this time. If you want to use an NV4500, you need the matching bell adapter for that, which looks like this. It's like twice as thick. The starter mounting is slightly different, and I'm sure there are other little details as well. Moving rearward, we run into our first issue, drive shaft length. Again, because of the wheelbase difference, this is not going to fly. Now this truck already has a two-piece drive shaft. It's not going to be the right length either, and it seems to use much smaller U-joints than this one does. If we were really lucky, we could just reuse the rear section out of that truck, keep the front section out of this one, and everything would be great. But we're not going to be that lucky. We're probably going to have this one lengthened. At the back here, we've got the venerable Dana 60 axle. The 73 has one as well, but it has 410 gears, and that really isn't what we want for the highway cruising. Some second gens did come with 410s. Those are well known to get terrible fuel mileage. That's not what we want here.
This axle has either 307s to 354s. I don't remember which one at present. Either way, much better.
The main rear spring pack on both trucks seems to be about the same. It's a 5-segment spring with a single overload extra helper spring on the bottom. However, the service body truck currently has an extra overload and the matching brackets on the top, which this one doesn't. I may actually try to use the springs that are in it. It would be a lot easier, though, to just roll this one under it, complete with hangers and everything. Then we wouldn't have to mess with U-bolts, but I'd really like to have those overloads. Loaded service bodies are heavy enough, and then you put a trailer behind this thing, there's going to be a lot there to drag around, so overloads are a good idea. There's no question we're going to have to use the front springs out of the Cummins truck. These engines weigh like 1,200 pounds, and we're going to need the extra spring to hold all of that up. I don't actually know if the front brakes are any bigger. We may or may not use these. Why is there a screw? The brake rotor may well be a smaller diameter on the 73 here. It's kind of hard to tell from this angle. The suspension itself is essentially exactly the same. So either we keep this stuff and change the springs, or we just transfer all of it over from the 93 truck. Probably the second one, but we'll figure that out later. I can tell you we'll be retaining the 73's gearbox because this one is a horrible, rusty piece of garbage. I think that covers everything. I'm probably forgetting something important. Now our next move here obviously is to pluck the Cummins and the Getrag out of there, then get this frame up on jack stands and strip out the rest of the necessary ingredients. I can't exactly do that right now. Again, I'll be going through this engine and all of its ancillary devices, cleaning them up and making sure it's as good as it can be, While I'm doing that, I imagine Allan will be gutting this truck like a fish and preparing it for its transplant. Maybe at some point we can get all the garbage out of it. Release schedules being what they are, this is as far as we're going to get for now. So hopefully this was fun and enlightening or something. And next time, we'll be doing all those things I just said. I, for one, can't wait to see that thing making the black smoke. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this. I did. In any case, as ever, thanks for watching. And remember, keep the greasy side down.